Andrew, first and foremost, how do you assess, as a guy at the front line of farming, the impact on the world market for grain?
Yeah, good afternoon, Alistair. I think we are in a really very difficult and tricky situation at the moment. And when you start to look at Ukraine and Russia, the two countries there provide around 30% of the world's wheat. So those two figures alone are quite realistic, and you can see the problem we've got. But also we've got, since the invasion and maybe before that, we've got the increase in gas prices and also the fertiliser problem that's meant fertiliser has gone up 400%. So that, coupled with the Ukraine and Russia crisis, is having a massive effect on the production of grain all over the world.
It looks pretty tasty and healthy behind you, a good-looking field there. No, I'm serious. They're lovely, bright, because I know in my neck of the woods, rain's been a bit of a problem and it's not looking quite as good as that. But you can't accelerate a harvest. You can't turn around and say, grow quicker, we need you more urgently. What have farmers collectively been able to do by way of response in this crisis?
You're quite right. We can't do that because when we plant our crops of wheat, they're invariably planted in September and October, and they're not harvested until the following August. So it's a long growing season. And so to help with that, we actually do have to rely on imports coming into the country. And usually we have French imports of wheat coming in July and August, which helps our plants keep running and helps fulfill our market requirements before our harvest gets started. And so usually we are importing wheat most years, but we can't speed up the process. And of course, we're not just growing grains on the farm. We have to have a balanced rotation. So my own farm here, we're growing beans, we're growing oats, we're growing sugar beet, milling wheat for making bread, and also feed wheat as well, and sugar beet. So we are growing lots of different crops as well. And we have to do this. Then, of course, we have government policy at the minute that wants to take more land out of production. And this is the big thing. And you've heard me mention this before, Alistair, that government policies are really hindering food production because they want us to take land out of production and put it into planting trees. And to my mind, we have to have a balance of everything. We have to be more self-sufficient. We are only 60% self-sufficient at the moment, and that is dropping at an alarming rate. But the government don't seem to understand or really want to do anything about that.
I was going to ask you that genuinely next, but you've given me a beautiful entree to it, because it just struck me when I was thinking about the conversation I was going to have with people like David Liddington, Christopher Mayer and Mark about the political diplomatic side of it, and I knew I was going to be talking to you and in a moment Nick from the NFU as well. I just wonder the degree to which that might change now, because the penny may have dropped with Boris Johnson, George Eustice and all politicians involved in this area, that suddenly something like Ukraine quite unexpectedly can crop up. And my God, we turn to people like you a bit urgently. Maybe they will have learned a lesson or two.
Well, you'd have thought they would have done, but they haven't, because they are still on this crusade to take land out of production, and they're actually paying farmers, paying us to do it, and they're actually saying that we are self-sufficient in our own grains and that we are no need to worry the invasion of Ukraine will not affect our supply. But the problem we've got at the moment is that is right in some years, but of course every harvest, our harvest tonnage fluctuates, and in harvest 2021 we produced around 14 million tonnes of wheat in the UK, whereas normally we produce about 16 million. And our exports this year, since this last year, have been really small, only about 270,000 tonnes, whereas usually when we produce 16 million or 16.5 million tonnes of wheat, which is our normal production tonnage, we'll export in the region of 3.5 million tonnes and still remain self-sufficient. But the problem we've got is, I've mentioned fertiliser already, because the fertiliser prices are so high, we are now looking at, can we actually justify in putting the amount of fertiliser on the crops, and I'm talking about nitrogen here, that we need to make the crops perform and grow, can we actually put the right amount on to get the maximum return from these crops? And at the minute, it's looking very dubious as whether we can do that. And the problem we've got is that we've got two fertiliser production facilities in the UK. One is mothballed and one is running. And that is just ludicrous that the government are not helping to get this other factory going that is currently shut.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. One final quick question. I love chatting to farmers, and I was chatting to one down in Hampshire not that long ago, and I hadn't realised about the futures market for grain, that you don't, obviously you don't sell it on the day when you've actually cultivated it, but you and people like you will be doing contracts as the year unfolds. So my tough question simply is this: what do prices look like in the medium and longer term?
You are absolutely spot on, Alistair, with the grains. And in my own case, I have sold grain at the minute that's gone out. It was sold 18 months ago. And of course, this next year, this is the problem we've got, is that people might look at the price of grain and say, right, it's £350 a tonne next year. But I've actually got grain going off the farm at £160 a tonne and £180 a tonne. And I'm not the only one. We sell a long, long way in front. We operate on a world market. We can't set the price. We are told what we are paid for our crops. And so you're quite right. A lot of these contracts, a lot of grain that's moving around and out of the country now, it was signed by contracts probably 2 years ago. And you can't go back on those contracts.
Fascinating stuff. I wish you well, Andrew. Lovely to talk to you again. And thank you very much indeed for what you're doing. And you keep in touch. You're welcome on the programme anytime. Andrew Ward there, farming champion and Arable Farmer of the Year. And perhaps you can understand why listening to him.